Tay had equipped her office with a proper kettle. She had stolen it from her civilian quarters, since she basically just visited to fall asleep at night there, and then dragged herself into the shower in the morning. Bork, currently excused from participating in, practically anything, was tasked with bringing breakfast to the team. He was allowed to, unofficially, read every report and make comments. They had tried to console him, but he said he felt like a secret agent, so the system was working well enough. Captain Williams finished the reports. The first attack had proved the concept, and he was now pushing seriously for an Intel engineering department. Tay had no idea of how far her work was pushing the concept of Intel, but both he and the Admiral did. Perhaps they should be meeting more often. Admiral, I'm sending you the engineer to confirm the details. She's fully briefed. Feel free to ask her anything. Our attack is ready whenever you wish. I believe the inhabitants call it the Protected Nest System. The Admiral was busy and blunt. I don't give a fuck what they call it. Admiral Williams, the fleet reports ready to attack Apex Intec 2. We have isolated the system, and I can report that our intel is complete. Tay had been sent to give the news, since Captain Williams was apparently arguing with a dozen captains that seemed to believe in astrology instead of astronomy. Admiral Williams nodded, about to dismiss her. However, this engineer had turned up some useful information and the odd piece of useful advice. Thank you, Tay. Anything you would like to add off the record, as it were? Tay smiled. No, sir. I believe we are perfectly prepared. I do wonder a little if it might be useful to make them fight amongst themselves, rather than chase them all over the galaxy. I believe that is how Earth dealt with pirates in the past. Thank you, Tay. Please inform your captain that we move in an hour. I expect you all to be at your stations. I will be taking this ship straight for the planet. Prepare for battle. Williams watched her leave. She had a point, he had to admit. They could be out here for years, squashing them one station at a time. He recalled his naval history enough to know that that could kill his campaign, should it dribble into minor conflicts. The fleet squadrons went back into the same twisted and perfected dance of death. Again, the enemy tried to flee, leaving the stations and planet as bait. It was obvious that no central authority was planning this, just the ingrained habits of a pirate nation. Occasionally, one of the powers would take offense at the Intec. Perhaps they shot the wrong ship, robbed the wrong trader, or someone had just had enough. A planet would be taken, a few ships and stations lost. Just the price of doing business, and the storm soon passed. Admiral Williams had other plans. After a little thought following his conversation with Tay, he had altered his plan a little. It was relatively unusual for an admiral to fly into the fight. Probably someone worked out that it changed the dynamics of the fight too much, giving the enemy too great a target, and driving his fleet into danger protecting him. Williams didn't think that it should be an issue, this time at least, since the system had nothing to withstand his forces. All it had was secrecy, and his intel had stripped them of that. He pushed his ship closer and closer into the front line, the fleeing enemy and stations falling around him. Finally, he put the ship in orbit over Apex Intec 2. He summoned Tay to the comms. She might enjoy this. Get me their leadership on comms. Let me know when they answer. The Intec were an insectile race, more like wasps than ants, he thought, and even more unwelcome. After he began blowing up the surface a little, Tay finally got a response. Put them through. The Intec despised war. War was futile. Taking and holding against another system was bloody and expensive. Much better to raid, to simply take the prizes of war in wealth and captives without the cost. Days such as this happened, some noble or general making his name. Space was too big to hunt them, not as they hunted. Humans weren't even worth raiding. Ships too small, full only of books and rage. Still, the humans were everywhere now, working on everyone's ships, advising them, interfering. Even a simple trader might fight now, not run as it should, simply because some fool human was on the weapons. Yet now they must talk. What did these fools want? Admiral Williams took the call on the bridge. You wish to negotiate? The Intec superior asked. Williams shook his head. No. You have already been bought and paid for, and I will extract the full price. I simply prefer that none of my new property gets damaged in this difficult time. I'm sure you understand. The Intec hissed, a babble of noise surrounding it. It took a moment to establish enough silence to continue. We are not bought and sold, we will fight. Williams laughed. That's what the previous Intec superior said, until they sold you to me, after they had already lost everything. I will give you a better offer that he got. If you leave the planet unharmed, I will give you your life and a ship for a name. for our next target, and if it goes well, and I take it as simply as I have taken your world, then you will be paid. A private fortune for you and you alone. Otherwise, well, I will leave that to your imagination. Suffice to say that you will die on this planet, eventually." He cut the comms and looked at Tay, a quizzical look on his face. "That the sort of thing you had in mind, Chief?" Tay looked at him, stunned. "Sir, that was fucking awesome." An hour later, a small ship left the surface, and the Intec superior was escorted to a conference room. Captain Zach Harry of the Noctima accepted the surrender. Captain Williams examined the intel offered, and Admiral Williams signed the papers that granted asylum on Earth to the Xeno pirate, with a full pension if the intel was correct, and prison if it wasn't. Captain Williams didn't need much time to verify the intel, since he currently had that system surrounded by his men, preparing for the next attack. Still, it proved the Admiral's strategy worked, at least once. The cost of that pension would be far higher than the Xeno knew, forever under the thumb of Earth intel. A polished prison, but a prison nonetheless. Right now he was making sure that the bastard had full comms, able and willing as he seemed to be to spread his petty victory to the Intec. Now they all knew that there was a price on their head. Tay was in her office, feeling the odd emotion that is thankfully not an admiral, a rare one perhaps, commonly associated with being around one when shit happens. She was waiting to see if Bork had managed to perfect the concept of tea, because as never in her life before, she needed a cup of tea. Oddly, Bork had become that oldest of things, a tradition in the very bones of engineering. He had become the apprentice, carrying tea to all, easing all the meetings that must be held, but that now had cake and comfort. The odd thing that Bork had a problem with was that there wasn't a single consistent cup of tea. She took a bit of sugar. Ollie took, well, mostly sugar, and Roden had told him to make it strong enough to stand the spoon up in. A mistake when instructing a Xeno engineer, no matter how you expected it to end. Pity, because she had liked that cup. Captain Williams picked the right moment to arrive. "Well done, Chief. The operation is concluded, a complete success. The Admiral tells me that the little twist on the end was your idea." Tay shook her head. "Sir, whatever I had in mind, it wasn't anything that damn clever. He really surprised the hell out of me." Williams smiled. "If you keep passing up credit like that to the Admiral, I'll be saluting you soon enough. In any case, I have news. There were a couple of 100 humans on that planet, mostly from Oz. Apparently they were sold from place to place. They are being lifted from the planet now, but I thought you could speak to them, perhaps advise us where to place them." As she sipped her tea, she wondered about the old days, all stuck on a rock under constant pressure, invaded, owned, ignored, and unwelcome. Stories carried through time, only the names changing. Now the galaxy was there, open and endless. Now imagine knowing that and thinking that your own people were dead, that you were debris floating about as objects, bought and sold in an endless line of evil. What the hell could she say to these people? She called Ben and asked to speak to the elders of the people. She couldn't do this alone, wouldn't do this alone. It was a strange gathering. The shuttle bay was crowded, the recovered humans looking mostly bewildered and tired. Children were being held close, men standing tall and defiant. This must all seem like a broken dream sequence. Perhaps they thought they had been sold again, that everything else was just more lies. She stepped up onto the platform, with nothing but an empty screen behind her. Hopefully it won't stay empty for long. Welcome back to humanity, to your freedom, to your future. My name is Tay, and I am from Earth. We have filled the skies, we have become strong. I found the Intec holding our people enslaved, and now they are free. These ships, these soldiers are the might of Earth, come to free all held by the Intec. Most of you have forgotten Earth, a place lost to your grandparents or great-grandparents, but I have some people who would like to talk to you, families that you might know and remember." She stepped back, connecting the screen. "Please, please work," she prayed. She and Ben had discussed how this would work, could work. She and he had stood aside on private comms while the elders spoke. They had their own plans. This was not the first time bewildered and lost people had come home. One by one, standing on now familiar red dirt, they called out for families, cousins, nephews, grandchildren. The elders called out every family name, everyone ever missed or lost since before their enslavement. They had held those names in song, in enduring memory. In the cargo bay, men and women started at their hidden names, half-remembered words from their families dead. Some called out in surprise, in recognition. Each of them was welcomed back by the elders, assured of a home and a homeland. Those few that had no name in the histories were vouched for by those remembered, now cousins, wives, or husbands. All were welcomed into the people, all promised a home on Oz. Tay was trying to recover quietly in her office. That lasted nearly 10 minutes before the Admiral arrived. Admirals don't drop in unless you are another Admiral. Even then they had people to fucking warn you. She stood up, going for the engineering version of attention. Admiral Williams grinned. It was rare to have a moment like this. Relax, Tay. I'm here for the tea. I hear it's the best on the ship, and frankly I could do with one after today. He sat himself down, waiting for Tay to calm down. She sat down and called Bork. Bork, I need tea in my office. Bring 100 grams of sugar, 300 milliliters of extruded dairy product, full fat, also 2 mugs clean, 1 engineering tool 26 and a liter of recipe 47 tea. He'll be here in a minute, sir. The Admiral enjoyed his tea. Bork had panicked a little, but had managed it well enough and left quickly. He started with one idle question as he waved the spoon. So, engineering tool 26? Tay laughed. Well, we called it a teaspoon, but it doesn't measure the tea, so Bork became confused. In the end, it was easier to change it than change him. It's fine if he knows exactly what he needs to do. He's a clever guy, just a little Xeno about stuff. She turned serious. Having to rethink the simple stuff has really helped us. Without Bork, well, we would never get out of the human headspace. He's probably the most important ingredient in the mix, at least for Xenotech. The Admiral looked into his now empty mug. Thank you for the tea. You will not be surprised to know that I didn't just drop by. I have news for you. I preferred to do it here, quietly, in case you wish to refuse. We dragged you off your ship, and frankly, Captain Zach Harry is still complaining about that. But your work is important. And how you handled the recovered humans. A miracle. I came to thank you and make you an offer and an officer. You will be Captain of Intel Engineering with special responsibility for all recovered humans. An entirely new department. Feel free to write your own job description. I'll sign off on it. I know that we need you and that they need you. I'm afraid the rank stays with the job, so think about it. He stood up, putting down his mug. Go to work, Chief. Put it together. I'll see you first thing in the morning. Tell Bork he is now making my tea from now on. Recipe 47. Call it work experience. He put 2 bars on the table and left. Slightly faster than the speed of light, Ollie and Oscar were there. They spotted the bars. They saw the shocked and silent Tay and found the solution. They crowded the doorway, saluting as hard as they could. Bork arrived with more tea and cake, since he thought this might take some time. Roden brought something stronger, in bulk. Tay arrived back to her quarters early. All work had stopped with the victory, then the Admiral, then the drinks. All the drinks. Whatever she had wanted, the crew were rejoicing in being the first ever members of Intel Engineering. Whoopee! As she stumbled to her bed, she noticed 2 vital facts. The first one was a shiny new captain's uniform, carefully placed on her bed. The second was that it was empty. Damn it, Ben needed to be here for this. She carefully hung the uniform up on the floor and slept. Captain Sullivan was getting some grief. The rumor that someone was chipping off parts of Intel, building something new, was unwelcome news. The entire fleet was here, not some one-off experiment. Then the Admiral had announced the existence of this new department and its new captain. Time to make a point or two, captains. Listen very carefully, the Admiral appointed her. I recommended her appointment. She is responsible for liberating an entire planet without you or your ships. She has developed all the intel you are currently using, and has been from the beginning. She is in charge because she invented the discipline, nothing else. I expect you to treat her as an equal, because I also expect her to outrank you in a month. Get your shit together. The Admiral is, with immediate effect, demoting Captain Hermes of the Oro, Captain Entris of the Crier, and Commander Sissel of the 2nd Marine Corps on the Mantis. Anyone else want to fuck with the Admiral? The room went silent as those 3 members were removed, under arms, from the conference. And so Intel Engineering was born. Bork woke her up, an anxious and truly ugly face, first thing in the morning. Captain, you must get dressed. The Admiral is waiting for you. I brought him his tea. He said you might be dying after last night. He was wrong. I have checked your vitals, although I await a stool sample. Please, Captain. I made tea. Tay gulped down her tea. The new uniform sat uneasily, overpressed and shiny. She had to admit putting those bars on had been a big deal, a seriously big deal. Suddenly she had her whole people to think about. It was pissing her off that that was in charge of that. One day she would explain how fucking stupid that was, but not today. There was enough stupid around right now to feed a family of 4. She just wanted to kill the fucking Intec and get everyone home. Admiral Williams had taken a little time over this. Captain Williams had marked it sensitive. Never a good sign, especially when he held the planet in his hand. Unfortunately, the humans were really bad at being slaves on this planet. According to Captain Sullivan, humans held half the land and were in the middle of a war about the rest. The problem was they were fighting the Fae. The Intec were playing this one clever, hiding in the mountains and space, sending resources to both sides and controlling the skies. Captain Zachary didn't enjoy being off his ship, but it was exciting to be on a human warship. Until recently, he wouldn't have believed it possible. He didn't realize that he reminded every human of a T-Rex, a memory from the very early days of media. He met the Admiral in his quarters. Admiral Williams was polite, and someone had prepared an excellent cup of tea. "What can I do for you, Admiral? What is so terrible that you needed my old bones over here?" He handed the captain the folder. Zachary took it, looking quizzically at the Admiral. On paper, no less. "How quaint." The Admiral shook his head. "Not quaint. Secure. Read it and you will understand." He pointed at his map. Intec 3. Our next target. Williams wore a grim smile, nodding at the planetary map. This is our worst nightmare. You told me once that you people make bad slaves. So do we. And now we get to see what happens when they meet. The Intec are hiding, keeping themselves in lower orbit. It will take minutes to destroy them. What I need, Captain, is a plan for our people. If this is as bad as the first time we met, we are looking at hell, Captain Zachary hissed, the pain of those early days and the cost. He didn't notice his tail sweep across the desk. He had been there. Humans. They had such short lives. Humans had called it Green Hell. They had called it the Garden of Bones. They both had many names for it. The only time the humans and the Fae had fought, arrogance and advanced weapons, against human farmers and bloody-minded defiance. The Fae had recognized their faults, but many had died. The surrender was no polite conversation. It was built over corpses, over a mountain of the unyielding dead. "You bring me this? You dare? Your people are killing mine. This is a war. Make your people surrender. I have been here before, Admiral. This time we will hold you to your word." Williams raised his hands. "Yes, I know you were there. This is not a war. We will end this today. I need you to make our people safe, above all. I'm asking you to help. The Marines will answer to you and I, Captain. We will end this war using human hands and human voices." He turned to the map. "Or they all die." The simple truth was that the treaty between their people was long known and simple. Never in arms, never in conflict. Blood bought blood, allies in all. The price had been paid. If the inhabitants didn't willingly end their war, well, they would die at the hands of both species. Captain Zachary read the file, sitting silently in his office. It felt good to be back on his ship, but this news would shake the very foundations of his people. Unless they presented the situation as resolved, held the Intec responsible and, well, outright lied if necessary. The term classified was going to appear on a lot of documents shortly. What he was looking for was a solution. After much thought, he called the Admiral. "I have a proposal, Admiral. We have one that we both trust that has shown some skill in this area. I will name Engineer Tay as my ambassador in this matter. I suggest you do the same. We will agree to abide by her judgment. Otherwise, I must summon our military, and I believe that will end poorly for us all. She must seek an end to this, skirmish and quickly." Tay expected a briefing on her new responsibilities, a pat on the head for taking the job and a work schedule that would keep her tired for the foreseeable future. She did not expect a grim-faced meeting with the Admiral and Captain Zachary, and a task so outside of her expectations that she momentarily thought she was at the wrong meeting. No such luck. "Captain Tay, we realize that this is unexpected. You have the trust of both of us and a deep understanding of both species. Captain Sullivan is currently removing the Intec from the planet. With luck, the humans and Fae will take that as a sign to end their hostilities." He paused, watching Tay's reaction. So far, so good. He continued. "Remind them that we can give them worlds, as many as they want. I don't want our military on that planet unless all else has failed. Although you may summon whatever you need, we will stay in orbit until called." The Admiral looked at Captain Zachary. "We are in agreement here while we have this window of opportunity. Should you fail, the Fae will be summoned, and together our forces will crush both sides." Captain Tay walked back to her office, taking a moment while she waited for the shuttle and intel to be prepared. She had refused any military equipment, preferring to rely on her own gear. She had no intention of shooting anyone. She called Roden in and dumped the entire department on him, saying that she had been sent to deal with some new issues. She allowed him to assume it was with the new department. Then she found herself heading to Intec 3. She wondered what the locals called it. Tay sat in her shuttle, orbiting the planet. She wanted to understand the war, at least enough to have a conversation about it. The Intec were either dead or in the gentle hands of Captain Williams. They had kept this little border war out of the skies. Instead, it seemed to be a mix of strong points and guerrilla war. From the destroyed fortifications, currently well back in human territory, the Fae had been losing, or they had changed their tactics. In any event, she had decided to start with them. She could probably persuade the humans just by turning up. It was the Fae that would distrust her motives the most. She waited until dawn and slowly descended in front of the largest fort. She wasn't that sure about their range, but surely the Intec wouldn't have supplied them with much. Anything modern would have cut through that fort like paper. Just like she had with the people on Oz, she waited for them to make the first move. It was a pity that the good doctor wasn't with her this time. He had no taste for a war between his friends, no matter how interesting the research. She scanned the place, watching as the alarm spread inside. She had no intentions on making a hostile move, but that meant nothing to them. The stonework looked hand-built, the carpentry pretty basic, and the gates scarred. The humans must have attacked here before. She recalled that human battles had always meant burning, towns, crops, farms, and people. The dawn had turned to rain, a far cry from the sun and desert of Oz. Wryly, she realized it was the damp north of this world, green, cold, and wet. Nice. Then the gates opened and a close file of Fae approached. Still she waited. No point in rushing this. She needed them calm when she opened the door. Instead, she scanned them from the med console. Burn injuries, weapon scars, and malnutrition. The legacy of slavery and war. She knew that the Fae lived a lot longer than humans, but these Fae seemed aged before their time. Finally, they formed a semicircle, covering the shuttle bay door. She recognized the weapons as percussive, chemical propellant guns. Any species went through that technology long before they reached space. It spoke to a lack of energy storage and education. Poor bastards. Finally, she realized she was stalling. Fuck it. She didn't have that much time. She put her helmet on, hoping for an extra minute before they started shooting, and she lowered the door. The Fae surprised her by rushing into the shuttle before she had a chance to leave her chair. They couldn't enter the cabin, but it spoke well of their bravery, or desperation. She moved slowly, watching a dozen rifles tracking her head. Diplomacy sucked. She raised her hands, displaying that she carried nothing. Hello? I am here to help. The Intec that brought you here are defeated. Your people are waiting to talk to you. You are free, and you will be helped in every possible way. I am simply here to establish peace between you and the humans, before we can land safely. She waited, but she wasn't getting the response had she hoped for. They remained unmoving. The rifles remained steady. She was wondering if the translator was working when one of them lowered his rifle. His face sounded like some old dialect, a long way from the smooth tones of Captain Zachary. We claim this ship. You will surrender, alien, or die. Okay, that was enough diplomacy for now. She had a fake captain for too long to put up with this shit. Alien indeed. She stood up. Listen to me, you stupid addled child. I don't know why your mother bothered to dig you out. I've seen empty shells with more brains than you. I am here to help. You may be beyond saving since your brain seems to have rotted with age, but I can see the malnutrition, the injuries, and the scorch marks. Now stop pretending that you know anything about anything and bring me someone that has the ability to think in whole sentences. Perhaps it was her unexpected fluency in Fae insults, or the sheer exasperation in her voice, but she recognized at least one of the soldiers snorted with suppressed laughter, and the guns were lowered. A sharp word restored order. Well, visitor, it seems you know my people well enough. I will summon someone that, as you say, can think in whole sentences. I caution you not to use such language with him. He is not a warrior. Tay nodded. Good, but first let me lower this field. She turned to one of the Fae, one that the med console said needed immediate help. Could I ask this one to step forward? With a flick of his minor crest, one of the older Fae stepped forward. She killed the ship shields and spoke softly. You have many pieces on metal close to your hearts. You have only a little time left if they are not removed. Will you permit me to help?" The soldier glanced at the officer, who shrugged. "He is close to death, it matters little to me." Tay silently cursed any warrior culture that ever valued such coldness. Also, though she didn't know why, the officer was lying. "Very well. Stand still. This will hurt." Her med scanner wasn't the best, but it was equipped for the basics. After about 10 long minutes, she held a small handful of metal, the shattered remains of a shell, she imagined. She handed them to the Fae. "Done. You should be sore for a few days, but that's just your muscles regenerating." The Fae began mummering low snatches of speech out of her range. It seemed positive in tone. She looked at the officer. "While we are waiting, does anyone else want some help? I know one of you had bad burn scarring. I could fix that if you like." The officer simply said, "Carry on," and left with the older Fae. The scarring took a while. The skin and scales were old, the injury deep. Still, after she had finished, the scars were gone, replaced with fresh scales. Again, she told her patient, "Give it time to heal. Give the joint plenty of exercise. It will hurt, but you should be back to normal soon enough." The soldier laughed. "Stranger, that was my normal. Those burns are from my childhood when the humans burned this place." The next soldier had been cut deeply on the back of his knee joint. Tay recognized the injury. Someone had tried to hamstring him. Fuck. She obviously didn't see his face while she worked, but when she finished, he marched out of the shuttle, avoiding his comrades. He took station outside the shuttle. She passed an hour sorting through the increasingly minor injuries while the soldiers relaxed into a peaceful calm. She had no doubt that that could change. She knew the Fae well enough, but it helped. She asked, "Where did your officer go? Did I offend him so badly?" One of the soldiers laughed. "No, visitor. That first patient of yours was his sire. He had been dreading his death. We are not permitted to mourn such things, but you have done him a great service, and so he cannot remain your captor. They will need to send a new guard for you, as we are compromised as well. Don't worry. As long as you continue this healing, every guard in the fort will want to guard you, probably with their wives and children." The guard laughed, except one who moved closer. "Visitor, my children are ill. Perhaps I could summon them here?" Tay nodded. "Of course, bring me whomever you wish. I await your leadership, but there is no great hurry." The day became a queue of the old, the infirm, the too young, and the too brave. Slowly and carefully she helped. This would have taken an hour with a proper med bay, but here and now it was enough. It was getting dark and Tay was getting tired. In the end, she simply told the guard that she would start again in the morning. None of the original guards remained. She thought that 3 shifts had passed through, but she was beyond counting. Finally, the original officer returned. He seemed to be trying to remain serious, but his crest was bright with pleasure. She nodded at his return. "Glad to see you back. Tell me, are you familiar with the practice of parole?" He hesitated. "It is a human custom, we do not use it." Tay had been waiting for this. "Yes, I know. My captain was a Fae. He told me you found the concept difficult. Nevertheless, I would prefer to sleep without my suit, and I can't do that unless you are willing to trust that I will not attempt to evade you. I came here to help, and I cannot leave until that is achieved." That stunned the officer. "Your captain was a Fae. You served with the Fae." Tay nodded tiredly. "All of us serve with the Fae. It is our first and oldest alliance, held since we reached space." At that, she turned her helmet transparent, allowing him to see her clearly for the first time. "My name is Captain Tay, engineer. Nice to meet you. Will you accept my parole?" The Fae hissed in surprise, stepping back. "Close your helmet, quickly. There are many here that would kill you, healer or not. I am indebted to you, but even I cannot look upon your true face without the urge to attack." Silently, Tay cursed. "You are a people stolen from your homes, as are the humans. The Intec manipulated you both into a war, keeping you fighting each other instead of them. As my captain said, you make poor slaves, as do we. Easier for them if we fight each other. May I have your name?" The Fae hesitated, aware that he was on very thin ice right now. "I am Commander Gerheri of this fortress, Fortress Thinclaw. We are waiting for our scholar to arrive. They are not permitted to live among us. It is too dangerous with the humans, with the enemy, around. It is he that will decide the truth here." Tay turned to the console, picking up the permission chip. "Here. Without this, the shuttle won't fly. Hold it for me while I rest. I have many to see in the morning, please. Put your guards outside and we will wait for your scholar. Is that acceptable?" Tell your men that I need to change the atmosphere or something." Commander Gerheri nodded, his crest flailing about. "I will take the guard. If you have deceived me, know that my life and the lives of those you helped are forfeit." At that he left. She left the rear door open, simply sealing the cabin. Well, that went well. In high orbit, the Admiral watched with Captain Zakhari. They had watched and heard everything. "Well, Captain, do you think she can make it work?" The captain was thoughtful. "We will know in the morning. She lives for now." Her morning started early. Word had spread through the settlement, calling the ill and injured in from hidden fields and small villages. She groaned when she saw it. The commander was still outside, looking dead on his feet, his tail drooping and his crest flat. "Commander, perhaps you could guard me from the front seat. That way you can rest while I deal with this. Also, please can you get me a bed and a screen set up for your people?" A few barked orders and the commander took over the cabin, guarding it well. She could hear the snoring. She took the children first. Most had simple childhood breaks, unpleasant parasites, and the occasional disability. All things long conquered by the Fae. Blindness, deafness, poor dentistry. She saw it all in those first few hours. Then the old joint pain, poorly healed injuries, age itself. Finally the warriors, those that had fought her people. Shrapnel, blade damage, more hamstring injuries, spike trap damage to the feet and tail. The list grew. As the afternoon drew on, an elderly Fae stepped forward. She waved him to the bed where he made himself comfortable. This one had no battle injuries, just the consequences of age. Joints and eyesight, scale loss. It took only a few moments to repair. Then he stood up and stretched. Ah, to feel young again. "Thank you." She noticed that the queue was gone, as were the guards. She had been too preoccupied to notice. The Fae followed her glance. "Oh, I sent them home hours ago. Standing around all day, waste of time. So human, what brought you here?" "Okay, I'm warning you that this one starts to get dark." The Fae laughed while Tay held her breath. "Don't worry, the captain didn't spill your secret, although you would have slept in the dungeon if he didn't know. I am their scholar. When they told me how you had spent your time healing anyone who turned up without sleep or complaint, it was clear that you were human. I was in our first war, I remember back. Spent half the day trying to kill us, the other half healing our injuries." He laughed again, stretching out his limbs, enjoying the restored flexibility. "We didn't understand then. They still don't." Then he sighed. "We are enemies here, like the first war except we don't hold the sky. Your humans are winning slowly. I tried to stop it, but they wouldn't listen. The Intec used our weapons on the human children. They stole our very claws to do it. I knew your people. They will not forgive such a thing, so we fled and built our strong places. So again I ask, why are you here?" Tay sat down, a first for the day. "Scholar, we found the human slaves on another world. We are at war with the Intec. As you probably know, we do not tolerate such a thing. Yours is the third planet we have found, although the first with Fae. Our alliance was born in that war of yours. That alliance was sealed in the blood spilled, in the peace built afterwards. We may not fight. If I don't stop this now, our peoples will destroy you both and blame the Intec. It cannot stand. We live too close, we share too much. It would be a civil war." The scholar paused. "Did we build so true that you would kill us all? To preserve this?" Tay smiled sadly. "Sir, there are no truer friends in a difficult galaxy. Many on both sides have paid installments on the price required to hold it so close. I do not wish to see you join that list. If it comes to it, you will be gone, and in my view, the alliance with it. My admiral, he will see everyone on this planet dead before he risks a war with your people. And it will be the Fae that kills you, not us. You say you were in the war." She looked at the ceiling. "Captain, would you like a word?" Captain Zakhari snarled softly. He had wondered if the engineer would hold any illusions that she was unsupervised. Humans. He glanced at the admiral, who looked completely unsurprised. "Engineer, I am here." The screen illuminated the captain, looking old and tired. She worried for him. This was hard on the man. "Scholar, I am Zakhari. I was there. Too well do I remember the war. She speaks the truth. This world will fall to us if you do not find a way. There can be no other path. You will fall by my hand if there is no peace. We are bound by oath and treaty." The scholar looked closely. Some detail, some old memory stirred. "Sir, you were no captain when I knew you, although I doubt you remember me. You commanded our retreat when they overran us. You fought until there was nothing left to fight for, then began getting our people out. We few here, we were stolen from the battlefield, but I remember that face. I also took an oath, sir. 2 old soldiers, better sharing whiskey and memories, were back in an old war, the present falling away as the memories, as fresh as newly spilled blood, filled the room. Finally, the scholar spoke. I will find us peace, General, or we will all die trying. Her captain nodded. Go to work, soldier. Let me bring the last of you home. You have my gratitude and my engineer. Use them both. Silence filled the room as she cut the comms. Tay spoke first. Scholar, I must deal with my own people. Let us end this. Go and speak to your old comrades. Find a voice for peace. I will leave you comms. Speak to the captain, the general as you need. Hold your people back for a couple of days if you can. The last soldier to fall is always the greatest waste. Commander Gerheri was standing at the door to the cabin, long since awoken by the noise. He had heard it all. He asked a quiet question. Is that my grandsire? Is this all true, or am I as witless as the human believes? The screen flickered back to life, the Admiral scowling from orbit. Then he paused and looked off screen, obviously speaking, but muted. Then he faced them. Commander, the captain told me he had personal reasons for searching for Intec slaves. In fact, he has been following us around for the campaign. Now I know why. Captain. He moved out of the way, leaving the captain speechless in front of the screen. Tay grabbed the scholar, moving for the exit. This was going to get all up front and personal, not something she felt she should see. Her captain would tell her if she needed to know. Without the guards standing around, the place looked quite nice. Old school, as her grandfather would call it. Tell me about your people, scholar. How long have you been here? The scholar sighed. As I told the general, we were taken from the battlefield. When we arrived, we found many that we had thought lost in that green hell. Our people, when we wish to, can breed quickly. Usually we prefer to leave it later in our lives, but the Intec controlled us at the time. That was their first mistake. Our natural weapons cannot defeat technology, but we can survive on this planet easily enough. Eventually, most of us had fled their mines and workshops, and they were losing people to us. They agreed to withdraw and pay for work. Our economy, such as it is trading with them, mostly medicines, since we have no access to the technology from the past. He stopped in front of a burned-out building, an eyesore on an otherwise tidy street. His crest rose, some emotion flickering across it. Here was where we first met your people. They attempted to impose slavery upon us, as if they had some right to our labor. We fought, so they burned the building around us. It took years to build a truce as the older humans died off. Their young were more like the humans that I remember from the war. Then the Intec decided that a truce didn't suit them, so they slaughtered a human village. Every man, woman, and child was murdered, all with the false claws of the Fae. Even though the leadership on both sides knew it to be a lie, no one wanted to listen to reason. The war began again with the humans raiding one of our villages. Another atrocity. He turned to face Tay. The humans, your people, are not what you expect. The Fae have long lives and long memories. I can bring them to peace with the general and the promise of better things. I will be surprised if you can achieve that with your own people. Tay returned to the shuttle in a very thoughtful mood. The Fae, whatever their experience on this planet, were at least prepared to listen. To hear of humans trying to enslave anyone, let alone their oldest allies, was shocking. Her plan needed to change. There was another crowd gathering outside when she got there. This time she turned her mask transparent. Either they tried to kill her, or her work here was done. Despite some seriously strange looks, and the occasional Fae that stomped away, they were happy to get treatment. Then a uniformed Fae interrupted. She recognized the burn victim, the one from the first guard. He was holding a child, a human child. Visitor, the captain sent me. He told me what you were. He smiled. I'll try not to kill you out of sheer habit. This small thing is hurt. We recovered it in the forest. I hoped you could help. Tay quickly ran the scanner over the child. He was unconscious with major blood loss and suffering from 3 fractures on his right arm, bruising and cuts, 1 major stab wound. She looked at the Fae. This child was attacked. It was no Fae that did this. I'm glad you think us so virtuous. You are, however, correct. We found him like this, pretty well hidden. Except for the smell of blood, of course. I am Neil Bora, Sergeant-at-Arms here. My wives are very impressed by your work. I'm afraid you may have raised their expectations. Tay glanced up. No virtue. I record over 11 healed fractures on this child. This was done by the worst kind of human. A Fae, even if it would strike a human child, would use claws or teeth. This is the work of hate. The sergeant stepped back. He could smell the battle drugs flowing into the visitor. He had no wish to face an armored human right now. Peace, visitor. The scholar has declared you an innocent, a non-combatant, and a diplomat. Tay recalled herself. Peace, my rage is not against you. Whoever did this is a human, or at least it wears the shape of one. I am no doctor, but even I can read this story. Someone is going to be incredibly painfully sorry that I ever landed on this planet. He will sleep for a while. Please bring me your people. I will leave in the morning, and I will take him. Tay finished her evening in a state of suppressed rage. This whole fucking battle, this entire war was about slavers, and yet again she had to face humans. Child-beating arsonists with a god complex. It took her a while to get a grip on her emotions. Her plans grew, sometimes a soft word, sometimes a heavy fist. The child had been branded, an act of war to her mind.